Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Okay, today we're jumping into one of those classic NFL debates you hear every single draft season. Running back weight.
Right. You always hear it. Speed, agility, sure. But what about just size? Does how much a running back weighs actually impact, how they produce on the field? Especially for fantasy.
Exactly. People argue endlessly based on, the eye test.
Well, it feels like it should, doesn't it? Bigger back, harder to tackle, maybe lasts longer. That's kind of the gut feeling, the eye test.
Totally. But our mission here for this deep dive was to get past all that speculation. We wanted to see what the actual numbers say.
And we used some pretty solid data sources to try and nail this down.
We did. We grabbed the official NFL draft combine weights, so it's a consistent measurement.
Crucial, apples to apples.
And then we matched that up against performance data. Specifically, the top 50 fantasy football finishers, PPR scoring every single season, going back to 2003.
So that's what, 2 full decades? A really big sample size covering lots of different players and eras.
20 years. It gave us a lot to work with. And honestly, the findings, they're pretty nuanced. Maybe a little surprising.
Definitely not a simple yes or no.
So you dove into all that data. What was the first thing that jumped out? Was there just a clear trend, like heavier backs are always better?
Not really. Not across the whole board, looking at all 50 spots. It wasn't like there was one obvious pattern everywhere. But we did start to see maybe a little hint of something when we focused just on the very top guys, like the top 5, top 10 fantasy finishers.
Okay.
Their average weight seemed to be ticking up slightly in the more recent years within that 20-year window.
Interesting. So maybe weight doesn't matter for an RB30, but perhaps it plays more of a role for the truly elite producers.
That was kind of the hypothesis that started forming. Maybe it's not just any weight, but a specific zone, a sweet spot.
A balance point.
Power, but still athletic enough. So we started testing different weight ranges to see if any particular window popped up more often among those top-tier guys.
And did you find one?
We did, yeah. After looking at a few ranges, one fairly narrow window kept appearing more frequently among the elite finishers compared to the lower-end guys.
Okay, don't leave us hanging. What was the range?
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting ability so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance, and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
It was 214 to 221 pounds.
Wow. Okay. 214 to 221. That's really specific.
It is. And when we looked historically over those 2 decades, running backs who weighed in within that 214 to 221 pound range, they showed up in the top 10 fantasy finishes 11.1% more often than they showed up in the bottom 10 finishers. The guys ranking 41st to 50th.
Okay, hold on. 11.1% higher occurrence in the top 10 compared to the bottom 10 for that specific weight group.
That's right. So historically speaking, being in that weight range increased your odds of being an elite fantasy producer versus just a roster filler.
That's a pretty clear historical trend then for that specific group. But
yeah.
What about the direct statistical link? Like if you just plot weight versus fantasy points, is there a strong connection? Does weighing 220 predict more points than weighing 205?
And that's where the nuance really comes in. It's super important. We ran the numbers looking for that direct correlation. Weight versus points. The Pearson correlation value was minus 0.041.
Minus 0.041.
Pretty much. It tells us there's effectively no meaningful direct linear relationship. Weight by itself isn't a reliable predictor of fantasy points in a straight line up or down.
So it doesn't work like, say, Draft Capital. I know that usually shows some correlation.
Exactly. Perfect comparison. Just to give you some context, that had a correlation of negative 0.234 with fantasy results in our data.
Okay, so negative 0.234 versus negative 0.041. Way stronger for Draft Capital.
Almost 6 times stronger, yeah. So draft position tells you a lot more statistically than weight does on its own.
Okay, that really puts it in perspective. It's interesting. It shows where top guys tended to be.
Right. It's an observation about historical clustering.
But weight itself isn't some magic bullet predictor like how early a guy gets drafted might be.
Precisely. It's not a standalone rule. And, it's also worth noting that the 214, 221 range was actually more prominent in the first half of our data, like 2004 to 2013.
Oh, interesting. Less so recently.
A bit less dominant in the 2014 to 2023 stretch, which kind of suggests maybe the league shifting more towards passing could be subtly influencing this over time, too.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's try and sum this deep dive up. Does running back weight matter? The data says it's complicated.
Yeah, that's the takeaway. There's no strong direct statistical link.
There is that clear historical trend. That 214 to 221 pound range showing up 11.1% more often in the top 10 versus the bottom 10 over the last 20 years.
Yep. It's been a historical sweet spot for elite production. Even if weight itself isn't the direct cause in a statistical sense, it's not a primary thing to look at, not like other athletic metrics.
So the practical advice is don't go drafting a running back just because he hits 217 pounds on the scale.
Please don't, no.
But maybe that historical data point being in that 214, 221 range could be like a tiny tiebreaker.
I think that's a reasonable way to view it. A small piece of the puzzle informed by history, but definitely not the whole picture.
Okay, which kind of leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Yeah.
As the NFL keeps evolving, maybe getting even more pass-heavy, does that historical 214, 221 sweet spot still hold up in the future? Or does the ideal weight profile for an elite running back start to shift? Maybe lighter, maybe something else entirely?
That's the big question, isn't it? We'll need the next decade or two of data to really see how that plays out.
Definitely something to watch. All right, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Hopefully that gives you a bit more data-driven perspective next time you're evaluating those running backs. Until next time.